Hello and welcome to the 8th Wonders International Women's Day series in association with the Kent FA and My Club Pro. We are bringing you 8 interviews with 8 amazing women working across the game. And when we were planning this, we were thinking we really want to speak to a coach, someone within football development. Who better to speak to than the person across the room, over there on the sofa, Natalie Curtis, who is Development Officer at the Kent FA, besides a whole lot more. So Nat, first question, tell us about your current role.
So my current role is I am the Women and Girls Football Development Officer for Kent FA. I'm now into my 7th year and it's been a tricky one so far, but so far so good.
I was going to say, obviously you've had to look after football during this COVID-19 crisis, but you've had plenty of experience coaching in the game as well.
Absolutely. So my most recent coaching role was as Technical Director at Gillingham Regional Talent Club, so working with the top 50 elite girls in Kent and hopefully trying to support them on their talent pathway and hopefully progressing through. So.
Yeah, definitely. So you're a UEFA A licensed coach, you work in football development. What's the best thing about your role in football?
The best thing about working in football is the range of people that I get to meet. So from the mum who's never been involved in football, who just so happens to have taken their child and is now looking at getting on the coaching course, to England coaches leading the next generation of Lionesses. So a lot of variety in my role.
And can you tell us a little bit about a lesson that you've learned courtesy of working in football?
So it's a lesson I've learned, but it doesn't mean that I still follow it. And that's not to take things personally. So everyone's obviously out, we're striving to be the best. Football is a matter of opinions and there's hundreds of them. And nobody's right, nobody's wrong. And people are going to disagree with you. And I think sometimes for me it's a case of that's not a direct reflection of me. It just so happens to be that we're having differing opinions.
I think that's a really, really good point there. When you're so passionate about something, you know, you're focused on it and taking criticism or, like you say, opinions is very, very challenging. On the subject of challenging, what is the biggest challenge for you working in football?
So at the moment in time, it's how quickly the women's game is growing. So Kent is obviously a huge demographic anyway. We've got Wildcats, we're now up to 54 centres across Kent, and it's just me. So in terms of trying to manage that, you're reliant on volunteers, and our volunteers in Kent do an amazing job at getting things going. But with the ever-changing world that we're now going through with the pandemic, I think the biggest challenge that we're going to face moving forward is how paid work is being impacted, which might then impact on how people can volunteer, which may see youth football in particular, they might take a little bit of a hit because people can't volunteer like they used to. So I think the biggest challenge is what's to come, and we're not quite sure what that looks like yet.
I think you raise a really good point there, and I know you and I are really passionate about helping football find its feet again. So hopefully those tuned in might think about volunteering or getting involved in football as the restrictions ease up and we get playing again, which is the most important thing. And talking about challenges and different pieces of advice perhaps that you've been given, what's the standout piece of advice you've been given as a woman working in football?
So I think it was given to me by my line manager when I first started at Kent FA, and it wasn't necessarily the fact of being a woman in football, but it certainly has helped me through. And that was, if you walk into a room full of people, half the people in the room are already going to disagree with you before you've already said what you're going to say. Another 25% of them are going to want your job, so we'll try and think that they'll do better than you. The other 25% are going to be on board with what you're saying. So it's about going in there thinking, I can't win the room, but what I can do is change and have an impact on the 25% that would then go off and have an impact on 25 more people. And that's kind of how you get the message across. And I think that's a big one for women's football, is the more people that we can get in to volunteer, play, watch, the more it will grow, because more people have an understanding of what women's football is.
Yeah, absolutely. And also women's roles in football as well. The whole point of 8th Wonder is obviously to create football's future female leaders, not necessarily just playing, but all of those other roles that we're finding out about in this series. And it is International Women's Day. We are celebrating. So if I was to ask you to pick out someone or to give a shout out to someone that's really had an impact on your career, helped you get where you are, who would that be?
There's no doubt in my mind, it's Liz Simmons. So Liz was a football development officer at Kent FA for 16 years. She brought me in to come and do some volunteering alongside Kent FA at some events. She then put my name forward for roles at Gillingham, which meant that I went in as an assistant with the under-9s and obviously worked my way up to become the technical director and an A licensed coach. I also ended up being the women and girls football development officer at Kent FA. So if it wasn't for Liz, I wouldn't be sat here where I am right now. So I have a lot to be grateful for.
And not only that, Nat, but I know, being your friend and former colleague, that you've been a part of the England coaching setup as well and had opportunities to go to St George's Park. So we all need someone in the room, don't we, to put our name forward for things like that. And everyone needs a Liz Simmons, and I'm sure everyone needs a Natalie Curtis. You've done that for a lot of people, I know. And if you had to describe working in football in 3 words, what would they be?
Ever-changing, exciting, and unpredictable.
Those, I think, are going to come up throughout this series, it must be said. And my final question for you, one tip that you would give a young person or an old person, anyone who thinks, actually, do you know what, I want to start getting involved in football in some sort of capacity?
Do it, but find the person that will always stand by your side. So for me, it was Liz at the start. As it's gone through the years, me and you, when we've faced tough times, we've always stood by each other's side. That one person that will always have your back. So not only is it just go ahead and do it yourself, but make sure that you've got that someone who will always be in your corner.
Absolutely. I think that is an amazing note to end it on. Thanks, Nat. Thank you for tuning in to watch this series. We have got more episodes coming up, more interviews with incredible women working in football. So do make sure you stay tuned.